So first, I just want to repeat my thank you to the creators of these directions. I live in Elkhorn, and I walk 1.6 miles to my office every day. So the only time I come downtown is for Creighton games. So I do know my way to CHI. And by the way, Creighton's playing Nebraska tonight. They're both great teams. So I was really happy. I agreed to this months ago. I'm like, Pam, what time is it? So very much appreciate those directions. I'm like, if I couldn't follow these directions to get over here, I'm in serious trouble, but it was really helpful. Pull in here, park here, get on the elevator, go to this floor, walk across the street. That is amazing. I was kind of curious whether they were created by AI. I'm going to just share a brief bit of my story, and I think the one thing that I'm really proud of, if you don't mind, I'm sharing, is I've been inducted into the Hall of Fame. I didn't even know there was a Hall of Fame for lawyers, but I'm a tax lawyer is my overriding hat. I picked that particular practice area because I knew that it was a rainmaking area and that I could create business and always have business. And I was always wanting to make sure that I had what I called my screw you money and my way of leaving any situation in which I wasn't happy, whether it was personal or professional. And I'm going to tell you, that's the way I've lived my life. So, including, and I will share. So I will tell you a little bit just about my firm and background, because probably everybody here knows multiple lawyers, I bet, right? I think there's a few lawyers in the room. And by the way, with all due respect to the men in the room, there is nothing that inspires me more than a room full of women in business. So thanks for coming out this morning. But anyway, I have a brother-in-law in New York. I have a sister who is also a serial business builder who has built international businesses. And I was visiting them in New York one time, and I had been at a couple of the larger firms here in Omaha. And large in Omaha is not large anywhere else, just so you know. The largest firm here is small in any of the jurisdictions I work in. But I was at a firm, and they are great lawyers. I'm gonna give them full credit. I refer work to them on a regular basis. But I am a tech geek who can program in my sleep. And so I started programming back when I was in high school. I think it was BASIC then. So somebody who knows the term, thank you, all right. So I was always very technology driven. I'm a technology evangelist, and I'm currently an AI evangelist. So as a lawyer, my current mission is to create the AI enhanced legal experience. Because if you've dealt with lawyers, a lot of times it's really annoying, right? How much is this gonna cost? I don't know, my hourly rate is X, but I wanna know how much it's gonna cost. I'm a business person. I need to know how much this is gonna cost. I don't care what your hourly rate is. Because my hourly rate's high, I'm gonna be really honest, but I can do things faster than my associates who have a rate that's 1/4 of mine. So you're probably better off with me. All right, it's less expensive. Anyway, I was in New York visiting my brother-in-law and my sister, and my brother-in-law was a hedge fund guy. He's currently now CEO of a publicly traded company. However, at the time, he was starting a small hedge fund, and we were sitting there talking. I was a younger tax attorney at the time, and he said to me, he was asking me questions about taxation of executive compensation. And so I was filling him in on the details of taxation. I think we had a conversation about profits, interest, and things like that. And he looked at me and goes, "What's your rate?" And so I told him my rate, which was an Omaha, Nebraska rate at the time. I don't really remember what it was. He's like, "What? You know more than my New York attorney, who I'm paying 4 times the rate. Why don't you develop a national practice and leverage the fact that you live in Omaha, Nebraska, and get a premium rate?" So I found a partner, long story that I won't share because I only have a brief time and I want to make some key points for all of you, but is that I had a partner who was always also technology driven. I was at a big firm. I think we spent $100,000 trying to discuss building a database. My partner and I left, we built a database, we built a website, we did it all for $5,000 in 24 hours. We automated everything in the kitchen sink. I created I thought my clients aren't gonna get a legal Zoom. I found out they did. So I created a competitor, not a competitor, I didn't want to compete with LegalZoom. I created a technology service online that clients could use for basic estate planning, for basic business formation, all of that. It's always when people are getting started off in business, the cost is huge. You know, I had a client yesterday, and when I told her what the fee was, she's like, oh, I don't know. So anyway, I really liked her, so I gave her a deal. Okay, so I admit, all right. Anyway, so I took my brother-in-law's idea. My partner and I started our own firm, and we started it in a farm field, in the basement of a building, in the middle of a farm field. We're gonna be our laptops and the two of us, and there will be nobody else. We're gonna live happily ever after with no partners. We promptly grew into a bigger firm. He ultimately became the CEO of one of our clients, and so I, over a long period of time, joined the firm that I merged my firm with a firm called Doug & Birch out of Chicago. The reason I joined them is because they're business and tech oriented, and a lot of lawyers are not. So anyway, because of my brother-in-law, I built a national practice. So even though I live here in Nebraska, I'm licensed in New York, several other states. I spend a lot of time in New York City working with deal guys and executives, and find that kind of fun. So, but part of what I've seen, and the reason that Pam wanted me to share today, was to talk to you about what are the things a lot of lawyers ought to know but maybe don't, and you should ask some questions to make sure they know what you might need to know as you start, build, or sell a business. So the first thing is, I love this comment when somebody says to me, I have an LLC. Okay, what does that mean? And so the biggest thing my point there is a legal form of an entity, and then there is the tax status of the entity. And depending on the business that you're building and what you're gonna do with it, it makes a huge difference. So everybody just goes forms an LLC to get started, and a lot of times they do it online, and they call me up and I form my LLC online. Did you elect a tax status? What's the tax status of that LLC? Because that tax status can make a lot of difference. Now, I'm not gonna go into all the different statuses. I just want you to realize, so an LLC can basically be everything. If it's a single owner, it's gonna be a disregarded entity, but you can elect S Corp status, you can elect C Corp status, you can elect partnership status, and it matters. So make sure you're talking to somebody who's gonna talk LLC or entity, what type of entity makes sense, because there are still corporations that have very good reasons in this world. And then what's the tax status? And these are two different issues that need to be discussed separately, and I can't tell you how important it is. The next one is state of formation. Lawyers by their nature are jurisdictional. So a lot of lawyers that practice in Nebraska are licensed in Nebraska. I'm affiliated with a license in every single state in this country, as well as a group of international lawyers. So I can reach out to any state anytime I want to. And what I will tell you is, if you formed a business in Nebraska, have a conversation about that, because you might want to re-domesticate it. Sometimes it makes sense. I rarely form entities in my home state here. I love Wyoming because it's got no income taxes and it has the very best disregarded entity status rules in the country. Delaware, I love Delaware. Delaware might be the one state that is currently preserving the rule of law, because our judges there are not elected, they're not appointed, they're professionals who know business. So Delaware has the very best law when it comes to business. There are some other states that I love, but the point is, never assume your entity should be formed in the state that you live in. And the second thing I talk about, and it's an asset protection thing, is what we call diversification of asset protection. So a lot of the companies I work with, we have one entity in Delaware. We might have one in Texas. We might have one in South Dakota. We might have one in Nevada. And there's good reasons for that. So especially as you build out a business, is don't just keep forming entities in the same state. Ask questions and find somebody who knows what those state differences are and why a particular business might be better served being formed in another state. Protect intellectual property. So I'm gonna tell you my own story. I merged, because this is my great example, IP. Protect it from the very minute that you start your business, and do not ever undervalue your own personal brand, anything that you've created in terms of know-how. You don't have to go get a legal copyright with the Copyright Office to protect. Everything you create, put a little copyright symbol at the bottom of it and claim that copyright and own it. And when you get into your business, do everything you can. You can't always do it, but do everything you can to keep rights, but particularly to your personal brand and name. Name, image, likeness is a thing. California is ahead of every other state in this area right now, but it will evolve with what you have going on in athletics. I'm protecting some international executives who have built property, but so protect your IP. And my story about that today, I'll just share. So when I joined DB, I have a personal website. I built my personal brand. I've been presenting for 20 years. I have materials, I've published. I own all of that, and they have no rights to it. They didn't apparently think it was worth paying for, so I kept it. I wouldn't have sold it to them anyway. So they have this new innovation officer, and I was talking with Pam about that this weekend, who called me because I'd asked somebody in the firm to just take a look at a PowerPoint I was doing for an AI conference coming up. And they're like, why don't you have the Doug & Birch branding on that? Well, because I own it. And I got a call back last night. Suffice it to say that I've now licensed, and they've made a deal, and I've agreed to put their brand on my materials. So own your IP and protect it. Never undervalue it, right? So, okay, then I want you to know what Section 1202 is. So I'm personally the beneficiary of what's called Section 1202 of the tax code. So 1202, when you start a business, is a provision of the tax code where you can start a business, and if you form a certain type of entity and elect a certain type of tax status and meet certain qualifications. And mind you, my 1202 presentation is 75 minutes long, but I'll share it with anybody here who would like a copy of it. But what you can do is, if your business grows, so a lot of times when you start the business, you're thinking about, I just gotta get the doors open, or the website set up, or whatever the case might be. But what I want you to do is think down the road, even at the beginning, because you will regret it if you don't. So find somebody that will at least be posing. When I have somebody starting a business, I'm like, let's at least think about these things in case they come up. I give you a list. It's not like just, here's your entity formation documents, have fun. It's think about, if this thing goes big, what 1202 does for you is you can sell up to 10 million of your properly qualified stock for absolutely no capital gains tax. How nice is that? If your business grows to, and if it grows to more than 10 million, I can stack for you what we call 1202 stacks. So one of the things I do for companies that are growing is we stack those 1202 exemptions using a variety of vehicles. So I just want you to have 1202 in your head. Does that matter? Ownership and governance, agreements. Again, protect yourself. If it's your business, your idea, you started it, make sure you have the ability to exit with dignity and as much as you can. So a lot of times when people are starting business and looking for funding, and I know that those on the funding end, so I'm the one who really advocates for the business owner, just so that you know, that's my role. And so I'm gonna tell you, if you're a business owner, what I want you to do is find a lawyer who will make sure, you might have to give up a lot to get the capital investment, but there are some things I really want you to try and keep. And so let's talk about a structure that will keep as much of that as you can, that thinks about what if this blows up and doesn't work. Worked with a group that started like a cryptocurrency mining thing, decided this isn't gonna have any value. We were able to carve that off, and send it on its way and pivot into a different business. So you always want your structure to allow you to pivot, allow you to survive. Multi-state compliance issues, always find somebody, ask about that. I'm not gonna go into any detail on that, but realize that a lot of times I worked with a young lady who started a local clothing shop. And she's like, I don't care about any other, state, except that she would post pictures of her stuff online, and she started getting calls from all over the country from people wanting to buy her stuff. It's like, well, okay, we're talking about this, right? So then, so think about that. You might think you're starting a very local business. Probably you might know the story of hammocks.com. There's a couple people out in Washington, and they were just putting information on their website about hammocks. And people started calling, and it grew into this business that they started out of their garage. They originally got bought out by a guy here in Omaha. Insurance, find a really good insurance advisor. And I tell you, a lot of times people hire their friend. Call somebody who knows your business and can talk to you, talk through what are the specific risks of my business, because they're not the same for every business, and it matters. You do not want to have a situation arise and you didn't have it insured. So you think through the risks. There's a cost-benefit business decision when you're making it, but you at least want to make that decision very consciously. So I like to send people to an insurance advisor who has experience and knowledge specific to the business you're in. It's the same thing when I'm helping somebody sell a business. I want to find somebody who, I'm helping several clients sell med spas right now. I want somebody who sells med spas all the time, right? They know the market, they have the connections, they know the industry. Prepare for your exit from the day one. Again, you're thinking about, nice advice, Mary. I'm just trying to figure out how to pay the first month bills. But plan your exit from the beginning, so that's the 1202. It's also your personal estate plan. So let's just say your business is super successful. Make sure that as you draw assets outside of that business, you are protecting them. Let's say, I've worked with a few clients whose businesses ultimately went public. Their exposure and their risks become huge. And so what I like is when you're just putting $1,000 into business A, or whatever the amount might be. Maybe it's $100 million. It doesn't really matter to me. The conversation I want to have with you is take care of your estate plan, which that's not all about a trust and will. I really don't care. I care about incapacity planning. What happens if you can't take care of things? What are your agreements with any founding partners? What are your agreements with investors? Make sure there's protections built into your plan. Make sure you are always thinking about the term asset protection. We use that these days in terms of, again, we have a somewhat potentially unstable climate in this country. So we are now doing what we call a lot of foreign diversification. So we have clients moving assets all over the world. We used to just talk about domestic diversification, be present in multiple states. Now it's multiple countries. So last thing I'm going to say is, and part of what this group is about, is that one, you should have a great professional team designed of professionals who care about you. I'm going to tell you, I was at a family office meeting in New York recently, and my clients were all like, oh yeah, these people, they represent X, Y, and Z, all these like famous billionaires. And I'm like, yeah, but that person on your team didn't care about you and what your goals are. So make sure you don't get sold by somebody who's, a pretty person, or make sure they care about you and your goals, who you are and what you want. And if they aren't asking questions and directing the conversation in that way, I have one word spelled with 3 letters. R-U-N, right? Last thing, this network, I had a client say to me early in my career, Mary, you're smart. You're really good at what you do. But you will never be everything to me. So the best thing you could possibly do for me is to build a network so that anytime I need somebody to do a particular function, you know who to call for me. So I took that seriously and not only build a local network, but a national network and an international network. And it's kind of fun to have all these people to call, actually, and then you get to meet people all over the place. So having a great network is fun. That is all I have to say today. Thanks for listening.